Welcome to Bearpaw Media and Education's Public Legal Education webinar series. My name is Nadine Callahoo Hansen. Bearpaw Media and Education is a department of Native Counseling Services of Alberta, and our primary goals are to make public legal education understandable, accessible, and affordable for Indigenous people. We at Bearpaw are not lawyers, although we do endeavor to make sure that this information is correct and current to the best of our abilities, and of course is edited by lawyers. Of course, laws change with elections and societal values. So this information is designed to be general in nature and may not apply to your specific situation. It may be still necessary to consult a lawyer for legal advice to assist you. For more information, you can also go to our website at bearpawlegalresources.ca or follow us on social media at Bearpaw Legal. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that the land in which we gather, at least I gather, is Treaty 6 territory and a traditional meeting ground and home for many Indigenous peoples, including the Cree, Saulteaux, Blackfoot, Métis, and Nakota Sioux. Today's topic, we're going to be discussing kinship and foster care in Alberta. And so I'd like to begin by showing a short video. This video actually is a 4-part series video, but I'm only going to be showing the foster care portion. You can actually find the other portions available on our website. They are specifically targeting different audiences. So there's one short video specifically designed to inform the biological parents. There's one for the children that are in foster care, one for the foster care families, and I believe there is also one available for families that are considering entering into kinship care.
A foster home is a safe place for a child while a team works on reuniting children with their natural family. A foster home is not meant to be a forever solution for a child. A child may be in care for a short time or a very long time. It all depends on each unique situation. Potential foster parents have to fill out an application. If you want to foster children, you need to provide 3 personal references, a medical reference, a criminal record check, and an intervention record check, also known as a child welfare check. Then candidates must attend a caregiver orientation. The classes offer valuable information about being a foster parent, discussing how it works and its challenges. If you're still committed after the orientation, you'll have a home assessment to make sure your home is safe and suitable. You will also need to obtain first aid training in order to get your home licensed. Foster homes are licensed as a part of the Child, Youth and Family Enhancement Act and assigned a foster care support worker. Foster parents do what they do because they are committed to their roles. They are not highly paid. However, foster parents get a monthly living allowance for each child, fees for recreation or special needs on a case-by-case basis, and a skill fee determined by the skill level of the foster home. New foster parents start out at a level 1. Level 1 can have up to 2 children. As you gain more training and experience, you advance to Level 2. Level 2 provides care for children with special needs and can have up to 4 foster children with an increased skill fee. Foster children may have been abused or neglected, but they also may have been very loved by parents needing help overcoming issues such as alcohol and drugs. Regardless, these children are in distress when they come to you as a foster parent. You must be prepared and committed to give that child the love and encouragement they need. When a child comes under your care, you will be provided with confidential and important information about that child. This includes the child's plan, a delegation of powers and duties notice, confidential information about the child and their family, and basic information like school and health needs. The child's plan has two parts, a Plan A and a Plan B. Plan A is often a reunification plan to try to reunite the child with his or her parents. Plan B deals with what can be done for the child if reunification is not possible. The details of the plans include things like visitation with parents, medical requirements, or cultural activities. A foster parent must provide a respectful, caring, and safe place to live. The child has a right to that. Expectations of your job include keeping records, driving to visits if part of their plan, bringing the child to all appointments, and monitoring the child's schooling. While meeting these expectations, you will also be offered some help. Your foster care support worker will assist with any questions or concerns. Foster care support workers can arrange for services such as babysitting, respite, daycare, as well as additional resources and training. The foster parent provides a supporting role to a child. The goal of the foster care program is to return a child to his or her own family as soon as possible. But we know sometimes that cannot happen. Only then does the goal become finding a permanent home for the child through adoption with a relative or a private guardian. Providing a foster home can be challenging, but for those who are committed, it is one of the greatest gifts you can give a child in need.
All right, so they are very short, roughly 4.5-minute videos each. I would invite you to view those on our website at any point. So we're going to start off by talking about what is kinship care. This is when a child has been taken into care by the Department of Child, Youth, and Family Services, and through the Child, Youth, and Family Enhancement process, Children's Services have to legally consider all extended family and people that have significant relationships with the child when they're looking at placement for the child, because the department legally has to consider what is going to cause the least amount of additional trauma to that child. And of course, no matter what's been going on in that child's home and with their family, the child loves their family. They might want the neglect or abuse to stop, but they certainly don't want to be ripped away out of their parents' home, usually. So the department has an obligation to consider what is going to be best for the child, but at the same time, what's going to cause the least amount of additional trauma. So it's far better, less traumatic, to place the child with somebody that they already know and have a caring relationship with than to place them with strangers in foster care. And so what is kinship care? This is when anybody who is either related to a child in care or has a significant relationship to a child in care chooses to apply to be a kinship care home provider. And I call this foster care light, because that person or family is agreeing to care for a specific child, but not opening their home up to every and any child in need. So it's targeted, it's very specific, but the requirements to become a kinship care home are very significantly similar to becoming a foster care home, with a couple of exceptions. So the full-time care nurturing and protection of a child by relatives, members of his or her community or band, godparents, step-parents, or any adult who has a significant relationship with the child could make a request to become a kinship care provider. I know a teacher who stepped up and agreed to become a kinship care home for one of their students because they had a significant, a caring relationship. And so they don't have to be related. It's about the relationship to the child. The purpose of kinship care is to maintain a connection between the child and their extended family and community when Children's Services has determined that the child can no longer live at home. So it's really about making sure that the child is still able to remain connected to their school friends, their extended family, their communities. Again, it's really about relationship. So why does kinship care work? It provides children with stability and permanency within a circle of family and friends. So they're not being placed with or not being surrounded by strangers, that they're being supported, cared for, and loved by people that they already know. Children are more likely to report liking their placement and to express a desire to stay. Children that are apprehended and placed in foster care with strangers, especially older children, will sometimes run away to try and make it back home. And so there is definitely a greater chance for a successful placement if the child or children are placed with people that they already know. Children who cannot live with their parents benefit from living with grandparents and other family members. Definitely, it is far more beneficial to children in care if they can remain within their family structure. It also respects cultural traditions. So how often are children apprehended and placed in foster care outside of their cultural traditions? And this causes even greater trauma because not only are they being placed with strangers, but strangers that aren't familiar or practice their cultural traditions. It supports positive contact with birth parents and extended family as a whole. Children and youth are less likely to be involved with the youth justice system if they are receiving that extra buffer of support. Early identification of potential kinship caregivers and the immediate placement of children can minimize secondary trauma. And I always strongly recommend that as soon as Children's Services gets involved with a family, that the family make a request for something called a family group conference. And what this family group conference does is it gives the immediate family an opportunity to be an active participant in the creation of Plan A, the case plan. What does the family need to do in order for family reunification to be able to bring their kids back home? And then they also have an opportunity to be an active participant in creating Plan B. Where are the children going to be permanently placed should Plan A not be successful? And so it definitely does minimize secondary trauma. Okay, so who can be a kinship caregiver? As I mentioned earlier, it can be anybody that is a relative, excluding the biological parents, obviously, or another individual with a significant relationship to the child who is not a private guardian of the child. The big considerations that the department makes when they're considering kinship caregivers is, will this person be able to provide a safe and supportive placement for the child or children free from neglect, abuse, or whatever the issues are? And also, will they be able to provide a buffer between the children and the biological parents, which is sometimes difficult? So ultimately, will this kinship care provider be able to monitor, maintain, or facilitate that case plan? But it can be anybody that has a relationship with the child. The responsibilities of a kinship caregiver: to meet everyday responsibilities of a parent, such as providing food and a residence, attending medical appointments, and following through with counseling appointments, medical treatments, school involvement, and other parental responsibilities. And of course, meeting the requirements of that case plan, making sure that the children follow through with whatever those conditions are. But there are some pretty big considerations. This is a huge undertaking. And I don't mean to equate kinship care to adopting a pet or even a child, but often people think, oh, yeah, I can do this, but they don't actually stop to consider the full impact that this decision will have not only on themselves, but their families as well. So I've listed a lot of questions that people need to ask themselves, really consider while they are deciding whether they're going to be a kinship caregiver or not. So what is your relationship with the child's parents or guardians? Keep in mind that stepping in and becoming a kinship care provider may require that you are basically a gatekeeper, and it could cause stress or friction between the kinship caregiver and the biological parents. So what is that relationship? If it's already a stressful relationship, is this something that you are prepared to take on as well? Do you have your family's support? I sometimes see where an extended family member will agree to be a kinship care provider, but then it ends up splitting loyalties among the family. So it pits sisters against sisters, or grandparents are feeling like they have to choose between siblings or whatever. So, have you sat down and talked to not just your immediate family, but the extended family as well? And do you have their support? How will this impact your own children and spouse? Again, this is going to split the care that you will be able to provide. And often children that are going into care are coming with some issues and may require special attention. So how is this going to impact your own family? Do you understand the circumstances surrounding the child's removal from the parents? Children's Services must make foster or kinship caregivers aware of whatever those issues are, so that they're not bringing unknown issues into their own families. How do you feel about those circumstances? How will this affect your relationship with the child's parents and extended families? Will you be able to set limits with the parents? Will you be able to support the child's return home when the time comes? Will you be able to offer the child a permanent home if necessary? Remember that at the same time, once children go into care, the department is obligated to create a concurrent plan, Plan A and Plan B. So what does the family need to do to reunify, bring the kids back, Or at the same time, where will the children be permanently placed should Plan A not be successful? The idealism behind the concurrent plan is that under the old child welfare system, children had to be in temporary care for a minimum of 2 years before the department could even consider any permanent placement plans. So, what ended up happening is that children were apprehended and spent years, if not their entire childhoods, being bounced around from pillar to post. They might have spent some time in foster care, in a group home. Maybe they got to go back home for a stint only to be reapprehended again. And so, growing up in under those circumstances creates a whole different bag of problems in itself. So, children grow up to be adults that are unable to form lasting relationships. They struggle with homelessness, addictions, unemployment, um, often are involved with the criminal justice system, not always, but often. And so the idealism behind this Plan B, let's look at a permanent situation right at the offset so that children aren't being bounced all over the place for years. So, that being said, can you commit to the time and energy toward the goal for this child to have a permanent home? Will you need financial assistance? And will you need assistance to meet the medical, dental, and emotional health needs of that child? If you are a frontline worker that is working within providing supports to families that are involved with children's services, this is a good list of questions to go over with any families that are considering kinship care. So then how do you apply to become a kinship care provider? It's a lengthy process, although Children's Services does have the ability to do a very quick screening process so that children can be placed quickly, but the paperwork still always has to follow. So even if Children's Services does a very quick mini application process and a home assessment, um, even after the children are placed, this whole process, this application process, still has to be completed. So, step number one is screening and approval process. So, prior to the placement, uh, usually, there needs to be an intervention record check. Every person that has ever been reported or had involvement with Children's Services will have a file for 99 years. The law says the department has to keep records for 99 years, even if it's just a report that they did a risk assessment and said, nope, we're not going to open a file. So they close the file and everything is no intervention, no involvement. They still have that in their systems. And so when somebody decides they're going to apply for foster care or kinship care, or for that matter, looking at going into any field involving child care, human services, you will be required to get, it's called a SIM check, a child youth information check. So Children's Services will run their name through their computer system and will spit out whether that person has a record or not. This should not be the only thing that stops a person from being successful at becoming a kinship or foster care provider or going into a field with human services or children. Sometimes if it's just a report and it was, unfounded and with no merit, um, then they can sign a release of information and the details will be looked at or further released as well. This also applies to a criminal record check. If the criminal record is old, doesn't involve violence, particularly against children. So let's say that somebody in the home, because this process, they need to provide an intervention record check and a criminal record check for every adult that lives in the home. And let's say, for example, one of the adults has an old driving under the influence, impaired charge, and it's over 10 years old. Didn't involve hurting anybody. It was just a bad judgment call, whatever. In a situation like that, that should not stop people from becoming kinship or foster care providers. So sometimes if 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 these kinds of things do come up, they may need to appeal their children's services department. And I always recommend do not deal with the department alone. Call a court worker for support. There are court workers both with Native counseling and Métis Child and Family Services. Métis settlements and First Nations often have justice workers as well. And so there are lots of family support providers that can offer support when families are dealing with children's services, whatever the case may be. But never deal with the department alone. This process, any process with children's services is always lengthy and extremely emotional. And so surround yourself with support. All right, so the intervention record check and the criminal record check. Children's Services is going to do a safe environment assessment. So they're going to come in and make sure that, that your home environment is safe. They will actually sit down and interview the adults in the home to make sure that, they will be able to provide a safe environment. They'll need to complete an application. A home study report will be done. They will be required to provide a medical reference so that, you know, they're healthy enough to take on the additional responsibility of additional children in their home. A kinship care agreement, as well as attendance at orientation to caregiver training. And of course, this is the ideal, but of course, in the rural areas, you know, it may be months before they are able to offer orientation. And so this ideal doesn't always happen in this order. What your kinship care providers or support worker or the child's caseworker has to review with you. So there's a background that needs to be shared with you as the kinship care provider. So there's a kinship caregiver's journey. They will let you know who is on your support team, not just from the department's perspective, but also are there professionals, other professionals that are providing supports for the family and the children, because they're also part of your support team. Are there other extended family that are offering to provide supports for you as well? The bigger your support network, the better. They're going to share the home study process, your relationship with the child. Financial supports are available through this process. Disciplining the child. So corporal punishment is absolutely not allowed. And so they will go over what is acceptable for discipline. They also have to disclose abuse. Again, it's important that you're aware of what kind of emotional baggage that child or children are bringing with them in your home, because this is no doubt going to have an effect on you and your family. So you need to be aware, as well as a list of additional resources available for you. And they will provide you with tip sheets and regional information of supports in your community or general area. So this is your kinship care team. You've got the kinship support worker, extended family professionals, the birth parents, and the caseworker. Unfortunately, if you're in a smaller rural area, the kinship support worker is usually the caseworker. Caseworkers will wind up wearing many different hats and performing different roles. But hopefully, there are a list of professionals and extended family, and of course, the birth parents will always be involved too, to surround you in providing support for the child or the children. So what happens if you are the kinship care provider and situations come up? How do you ask for help? So the first person that you're going to contact is the kinship care caseworker or support worker. Sometimes children's services will put additional supports in place if it's a family support worker through the local friendship center or McMahon or Métis Child and Family Services. Lots of different services available. It's always dependent and different of what's available in your area. But they are the kinship caseworker, support worker, are to help you identify informal supports that are available to your home. The kinship care support worker is to monitor and evaluate the situation in your home and provide or suggest professional supports for you. It's critical, absolutely crucial, that the caseworker still maintains a connection to what's happening, that they're just not placing the children in your home because it's a safe place and then leaving you to deal with the problems as they arise. That's not what's happening. That's not what's supposed to happen. They're supposed to continue monitoring the situation and maintaining that case plan. They will also, hopefully, advocate for additional professional supports for the child in order to maintain the kinship placement. So they should be actively involved to provide ongoing supports for you so that the kinship caregiver isn't just being left on their own to deal with it. Under the old Child Welfare Act, if extended family wanted to offer assistance to families that were involved with children's services, the only way that they could get involved before was to apply for private guardianship. And then children's services ultimately had to consent to that guardianship application before it even went before the courts. And under a private guardianship order, under the old act, families would receive somewhere in the neighborhood of $80 to $90 per month for financial support. Opening your home up to a child in need should not detract or take away from your immediate family. So you shouldn't have to be taking food and school costs, extracurricular fees away from your own children to shoulder the costs of providing care for someone else's child. And I don't know about you, but $80 to $90 a month doesn't cut it. So under the Kinship Care program, anybody that is an approved kinship caregiver will receive the basic monthly fee, foster care fee. So the basic foster care fee, which is dependent on the age of the child. So it can be anywhere from, say, $600 to $900 per month per child, which certainly adequately covers the extra food, the extra expenses for utilities and school supplies and all the extras, for sure. As well, there is other financial assistance available for medical costs, recreational and vacation allowance. Of course, these things need to be pre-approved and receipts need to be provided. School fees and supplies, bus passes, etc. Clothing that needs to be bought to bring the child's standard of living up to a base rate. So if the child comes to you and only has the clothes on their back, and sometimes it happens. In order to provide adequate care for that child, families need to go out and purchase a lot of clothing and school supplies, that kind of stuff, which all costs money. So being a kinship care provider shouldn't mean that all of the funds to cover these expenses should come out of your pocket. The department is supposed to be providing adequate financial support. It's not about getting rich. It's certainly not enough money to get rich, but it's enough money to adequately support that child or children in your home. So now we're going to transition into foster care. What is foster care? It's a home approved and licensed in the province of Alberta by a director under the Child, Youth and Family Enhancement Act, or through an agency that has been delegated by a Child and Family Services Authority or delegated First Nation agency. Either way, whether it's directly through the department or through an agency delegated by the department still has the legal obligation to monitor to make sure that all of the policies are upheld. Yes, it's a tough job. We also have in Alberta a department called the Office of Child and Youth Advocacy. And they're like a watchdog to make sure that the department is following what they're supposed to be doing. And anytime there are concerns with children in care, people can contact the Office of Child and Youth Advocacy, and they will actually go in and do investigations. The purpose of foster care is based on the belief that a family and community is the most beneficial and desirable environment for raising a child. A foster family is a temporary placement for a child who cannot remain with their own family for lots of various reasons. The process to become a foster care provider is very similar to the kinship care, with some additional requirements. There's the application form, the criminal record check for all of the adults in the home, as well as the intervention record check, medical references. They must provide personal references as well, and the department may ask for additional information. They will do the foster home assessment report, which is extremely thorough. An up-to-date criminal record check must be provided periodically. They have to comply with all the training, and it is an extensive training, as well as compliance to applicable health and safety legislation. These homes are licensed, and so they have to continue ongoing compliance. So there will be training available periodically. They also will have to re-license their home according to the health and safety legislations. And so it's not just this one-time application fee or application process, but they have to continue to make sure that they comply to maintain that licensing process. As well, the training is usually 6 weeks, 6 weekends, whatever. It's fairly extensive training. So the roles and responsibilities of the child and family services workers within the foster care program. The foster care worker, first of all, matches foster children to foster families. Again, the ideal is to place children with extended family or people with significant relations with that child. But when that is not possible, they will look at placing in foster homes. And again, the idealism is that they're going to find a foster family that is still within that child's community and try to match them with foster families that also match their cultural backgrounds as well. We all know that although this is an idealism, it doesn't happen all the time. And in fact, families that are involved with children's services in the rural areas will sometimes even have their children placed in foster care hundreds of kilometers away from their own communities, which is extremely unfortunate. There is a huge need for more kinship caregivers, as well as culturally matched foster homes within the families or children's home communities. We just, you do the best you can. So the foster care worker is also to provide ongoing support and training to foster families, again, not to be left to their own devices. They're to complete annual evaluations on the foster families. So every year they have to go through that evaluation process. Complete reassessments when there's a change in the foster family circumstances. So if, let's say, an adult within the family marries and brings in their new spouse within that family home, that would be a significant change in the family circumstances. And so then the department would then be required to go in and do a reassessment. Then if you actually have a larger center where you have a foster care worker and a foster care assessment caseworker and an investigator, again, smaller centers, usually it's one person wearing these three hats. But larger centers, you will be dealing with different workers. The foster care assessment caseworker does the home assessment and approves foster families to care for children. They're to provide information to potential foster parents and assist in the application process to become a foster parent, and then recruits and approves foster families. The investigator contacts the family, gathers information, assesses risk to the children, determines whether the child needs protection services, and makes recommendations. They transfer the case to a caseworker if further protection services are needed, and they may place children in your home and transfer to a caseworker. And like I said, in smaller centers, it's usually one person that is doing these three roles. So very busy. They have a lot of responsibility, and I don't know if you could pay me enough to do that job. The caseworker. So we also have the caseworker and the crisis caseworker. The caseworker completes a family assessment. They coordinate activities with the natural family and the foster family, reviews and evaluates progress of the foster child and the child's natural family, in consultation with others, makes major planning decisions for the child and has primary responsibility for development of the child's case plan, and will appear in court when required. And then the crisis caseworker or the on-call duty caseworker is available after hours, investigates child abuse and neglect complaints, and responds to emergencies on existing cases. And I can say that in the smaller regions, every caseworker has to do all of these things. As I'm reading through this list, you can imagine how much responsibility falls on one or two people. And then in addition to that, every caseworker in the smaller centers is on a rotation to do on-call duty casework. And so their caseloads are large, and each child that's in care, they have a huge amount of responsibility. In some regions, the foster care worker may also be the licensing officer, which coordinates the application process for families applying for license to foster. So this person is making sure that every foster care home is in compliance with their licensing obligations. They review health and safety requirements for the application, completes the environmental assessment safety checklist at the home, collaborates with collateral authorities, the health, fire, and municipal planning authorities, and then of course issues the licenses. If we're dealing with communities, First Nation communities, there will be a band designate that is appointed by the band. And so if the department has reason to believe that the child is Indigenous, including First Nation Treaty, Métis, or Inuit, and is a member of a band and resident on reserve or Métis settlement, they must involve a person designated by the council of the band in planning for the services to provide to the child. And in fact, legally, the department has to provide a minimum of 30 days served notice of the first court appearance, and the band designate or a lawyer that they may have appointed has the right to appear on that first appearance court date. And they have the ability to make recommendations on where the child or children could be placed on or off reserve, as well as services that could be provided for that child. And so there's also this outside person that has a fair amount of power, both at the front end as well as at the back end of this whole service array. With treaty children, if the department is approved for permanent guardianship and they are planning to make an application for adoption, the band has to consent to that adoption. And without the band's consent, no treaty child in Alberta can be placed for adoption. So they do have a fair amount of power at the front and back end. What to expect when children are placed in your home. Before a child is placed in your home, you will be given the information you need to decide whether or not to accept the placement. This will also give you an opportunity to prepare for the child's arrival. If the child is old enough, he or she will be consulted about the placement. So children that are 12 and older, they have the legal right to sign consent. In fact, they have to sign consent for any access or visitation by anybody, parents, siblings, grandparents, anybody that has a significant relationship to the child. If If there is visitation being requested and the child is 12 or older, if they don't consent with a written consent, those visits don't happen. When possible, pre-placement visits are arranged by the caseworker. These are especially useful for older children as they help all parties get a sense of whether the match will be successful. Pre-placement visits can make the transition from one caregiver to another easier. Every effort is made to keep siblings together, but it's not always possible. When this isn't possible, foster parents may be asked to assist in maintaining contact between those siblings. I know that I make it sound like this process is just so smooth and everything happens so well, but it doesn't. As all of these requirements are required, um, the department is also mandated to make sure that everything from the reporting to the final concurrent plan and placement of the children have to be done within 45 business days. So there's a whole lot of work that needs to be done in a very short period of time. And so when you add the legal requirements for kinship caregivers and foster care homes, it's an overwhelming amount of responsibility. And again, in rural areas, it's usually left up to one or two workers that need to get all of this stuff done. So, and I say this so that people understand why their caseworkers may take a long time getting back to them, or why there's so many delays in the process is because they have to become master jugglers. So the entitlements or the financial supports to foster care providers, just like the kinship care providers, they also receive a basic monthly maintenance based on the child's needs as well as the age of the child. So anywhere from say $600 to $900 based on the child's age. And that can also be higher if the child is special needs or requires special assistance in any way. Also, they qualify for a skill fee. So the longer a person is a foster care provider, and with more and more training, their skill classifications go up, and then they get paid more money. So these numbers might be a little out of date because they are a few years old, so they may have gone up, maybe not. But children between the ages of 0 and 1, foster parents and kinship care providers are to be receiving $22 per day per child. From 2 to 5, $22.37, from 6 to 8, $24.54, and from 9 to 11, $25.93. 12 to 15, that goes up to $29.36, and 16 to 17, $33.56 per day. Skill fees, level 1 skill fees receive an additional $13.50 per day, and level 2 receives an additional $26 per day. There's also money available for annual recreation. So maybe they're looking at buying a swim pass or a recreation pass for that child, and there is money available for that. Foster care, foster parents will also receive a travel and subsistence allowance, and there also may be available babysitting or respite care. So, and school fees and supplies and bus passes, those kinds of things as well as medical costs. So lots of financial supports available. So what about the skill classifications? How do they get classified, and what's the difference? So when a child comes into care and needs foster care placement, all efforts are made to match the child with a foster family. Foster families are classified to reflect the level of training, skills, and experience of their home. The classifications also aids in matching children to the home. So foster home classifications are level 1 and 2, and then there's also specialized homes. Specialized homes will be classified according to the specialized level of care provided by the foster home. Maybe there's a foster home that is adapted for children in wheelchairs, so they have ramps into their homes and wider doors to fit a wheelchair in. Maybe they have a vehicle that is equipped with a hydraulic lift for wheelchairs. So those would be classified as a specialized home. I would invite you to go and look at our resources, bearpawlegalresources.ca. We have tons of family court resources, from private parenting laws to dealing with the Child, Youth, and Family Enhancement Act. So there's just lots between videos and publications. We also have a fairly extensive parenting guidebook as well that has a lot of information on the private parenting stuff. So as foster care providers increase their skill level, it means that they are increasing their training and experience. The level 1, everybody has to complete the basic foster care training, as well as complete 9 hours of supplemental training every year. So maintain, update their training levels. Level 2 will need to do the level 1 stuff, but then they attend training required to meet the individual needs of the child. They've completed the core training for level 1, and then completes 12 hours of supplemental training every year. And again, I talked about the specialized training for specialized homes, where they maybe have expertise in training on dealing with children with mental disabilities or physical disabilities. And again, it's going to be very individual. In order to be level 2, you have to have been a foster parent for at least 2 years, and then specialized, you would demonstrate high levels of competency in the area of expertise. And then I've also provided demonstrable conditions that people must exhibit competently within level 1, level 2, and specialized. So what to do if problems develop and you're a foster parent and one of your foster children, you're having problems with them. So if you disagree with a decision made by the caseworker, it's recommended that you discuss it with the caseworker. You're in a working relationship with the support team, and so you should always, your first course of action should always be to discuss it with the caseworker. Remember to focus on the child's best interest, and you and the caseworker should work together toward that goal. When agreements cannot be reached about what is in the best interest of the child, There are several alternatives for a review of the situation. However, foster families cannot appeal court orders through this review system. So if a foster parent and a caseworker have a disagreement that they cannot resolve, they're to use the protocol and guidelines for resolution of issues in foster care. This protocol is available through your caseworker or foster care worker and should have been provided to the foster parent right at the onset. It will be included in your foster parent guidelines so that you always have the information and the contact information to get a hold of the caseworker, supervisor, and if necessary, the office manager, because there's always a chain of command. You can also ask for an administrative review. So in the event that the issue is still unresolved, any person who is affected by the decision, whether it's the foster child, the foster parent, or the biological parents, or the caseworker, can make a request for an administrative review. The decisions which may be reviewed are specified in the Enhancement Act. Ask the caseworker if you're unsure which decisions can be reviewed. If you decide to proceed with an administrative review, you must complete and submit the required form within 30 days of receiving the decisions in question from the caseworker. So there's a short timeline that you have to get the request for an administrative review in. And you can obtain the form from any designated First Nation administration office or Child and Family Services Administration office. In most cases, a manager and one other employee from outside the office will carry out your review. The review committee must let you know their decision within 15 calendar days of your request. After the administrative review is complete, you have 30 days to appeal the decision to the appeal panel. The Enhancement Act stipulates that most decisions must first go through an administrative review, with exceptions that can be directly appealed. So there is this appeal process that must be followed. I've also included, just to sum up the Kinship and Foster Care workshop, is the child's rights and expectations, because after all, this is all about the child that's in care, and they do have rights and expectations. So the child has the right to live with people who care about, respect, and keep them safe. They have the right to be who they are, know their history, to keep their favorite things with them, have a reasonable amount of freedom and privacy, to know the plans made for their care and know why they're in care, to be involved in decisions that are made about them and know why a decision was made, to visit or talk with their family and friends, and to be told why they can't, to be left alone when they are visiting or talking to their family, as long as they're safe, to visit a doctor or dentist whenever they need to go to school the same as any young person in Alberta does, to have their rights in care explained to them, to know about and be helped to call the child and youth advocate, to talk to their lawyer, advocate, or caseworker by themselves, and to learn the things that will help them to be the best person they can be. Now, one of those short 4.5-minute videos that is available on our website is called, it's all one video called Making It Home, but 4 segments. And one of those segments is specifically for the child in care. And they do cover the child's rights and expectations. And it's a beautifully done video on the bird family. So they got these little birds that are in care and whatever. But in addition to talking about letting the child know what their rights are and what to expect while they're in care, the video also explains the child's appeal process, because even the child that's in care has an appeal process. So if the child in care has a problem during their stay, they should first of all call their caseworker. And if they cannot resolve the issue with the caseworker, call the caseworker's boss. And then again, if they can't resolve the issue with the caseworker's boss, they can call the child and youth advocate. And I've provided the numbers for Edmonton and Calgary, as well as the toll-free number. Because again, this is all about the best interest of the child. All right, so that is everything that somebody would need to know about the kinship and foster care. We have on our website a booklet on Every Child Deserves a Family, which outlines all of this information, and the videos as well.